was just released. We'll talk about that and so much more. Dan, what's the highest you think quarterly growth could be in the next 3 years? You think this is it, or you think it'd be higher than 3?
I think it could be higher. I think you could get in the low 4s.
Really?
I mean, not for a sustained period, but you could have a hot quarter or two.
Sean, do you think you can get into the 4s?
I do.
Okay. That's interesting. We'll talk about the economy and a bunch of other stuff. There's more Epstein news. Those of you who wish us we get off the story, don't blame us, blame reality. We'll talk about Epstein. We're going to talk about the Democratic Party, and we're going to talk about China and a few other things. If you'd like to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand if you're here on the two-way platform. If you've never raised your hand before, today would be a great day to raise your hand. Last night we had 10 of you as part of a pop-up focus group talking about the Epstein case, and I couldn't have enjoyed it more and learned more. So grateful for that. And we had some new people as part of that. So please, if you're new, raise your hand, get in on the conversation. If you're watching on X or YouTube, two very popular social media platforms, which allow for free expression, and we encourage that, but don't put smack in the chat. And we have a special rule: peace, love, and understanding, please, should animate all that you do in the chat and here if you raise your hand. Let's go through the schedule, as our British correspondent would say. The president today, well, first of all, the pool. Let's put up the White House pool. Newsmax is a secondary TV pool, nothing out of the ordinary there. Fox, Time Magazine, where I used to work, secondary print. But Sean and Dan, the new media, Migrant Insider. Sean, does that one stump you?
More legacy media. More legacy.
Migrant Insider. Do you know what that is?
You know, the funny thing is, the schedule came out last night, I think about like 10:30 or something, maybe plus or minus a little. And I remember looking at that and I go, I know Mark's going to ask in the morning. And I'm just not. I was like, I don't have it in me.
Paul Wilkie was interested enough. He went and pulled the homepage. Here's the homepage of Migrant Insider. It seems to be a very immigration-focused news source that certainly is not antithetical to the administration's point of view. So Migrant Insider, the new media pool today. Pool call time right this hour, 9 a.m. 1:30, the president signs what's called a congressional bill. I don't know what bill that is. Closed press could open up. And then at 4 o'clock, this healthcare event that Sean was touting earlier in the week, making health technology great again. CBS News seems to have the exclusive on what that is, or at least broke the story. Tech companies to work with Trump administration on improving healthcare data access for older, disabled Americans. Sounds very promising. Sounds like something no one could be against. We shall see. At 4 o'clock, that's open to the pre-credentialed media, and we'll have full coverage, full team coverage of that on two-way tonight at 6 Eastern. Don't know what the vice president's doing today. Scott Bessent briefed the president telephonically yesterday after he met with the Chinese, but we're told he'll brief the president today in the Oval on where the bilateral talks stand. We'll discuss that in a moment. House is out, but the House Oversight Committee is meeting, and they're hearing from former Biden counselor Steve Ricchetti in their probe about the alleged cover-up. I shouldn't say alleged, actual cover-up of Joe Biden's cognitive decline. So Ron Klain didn't take the fifth. Everyone else has. I will say Steve Ricchetti, who I've known for years, was probably the toughest enforcer against Democrats who spoke out against Joe Biden on cognitive decline or anything else. It'd be very interesting if he takes the fifth. Let's do a quick yes/no answer. Sean, will Steve Ricchetti take the fifth?
Parliamentary inquiry.
Yes.
Is Mr. Ricchetti an attorney?
I don't believe he is.
Okay. I only asked that because I think you pointed this out prior to Mr. Klain's interaction with the committee. Ron Klain, not just as chief of staff, but sort of a successful lawyer. And so I think he so I'm going to say yes, he takes the fifth.
Yeah. Steve is a political hack. I don't believe he's an attorney. Political hack is a profession.
Yeah,
Dan, does
a
he
better
take
profession than a lawyer, by the way.
Does he take the fifth?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
By the way, Mark, just what you said about that health event, because you've talked about in different podcasts and stuff that Trump will not just lie down when he has problems. The fact that he's had some issues with seniors over Social Security services and stuff, that is a smart move to try to throw a bone to the senior community that tends to vote in midterms.
Totally agree. And it's not an accident. This is the most political White House, or as a political White House as I've ever covered. And I'm telling you, one of the most undercovered stories right now in the Trump universe, and Sean has referenced this before, they're so unleaky, not just in terms of negative things about the president, but they do not talk about their strategy. There are some White Houses where they do this event today, and there'd be somebody out on background or even on the record saying, we've got a problem with seniors, and so we're doing this event. They're just doing it. And it's every president's dream, every chief of staff's dream, every comms director dream. Just do it. Show, not tell. Don't come across as political. Again, it's very disciplined. It's not what some people think of as the way a Trump White House would run, but it is running that way.
But it's Susie Wiles' MO.
Yeah. All right. Economy. Here's Wall Street Journal.
By the way, I will say this today is seniors. You're going to see a lot of the key folks, Oz in particular at CMS. But then the tech piece is the real critical thing that I think is going to get missed. The role of bringing in Oracle and other tech, and not just tech, but innovators. Is probably the best word about how to address a lot of issues that are long-term, systemic, and potentially create cost savings and greater choice, et cetera. So I think I'll be interested to see, to your point, does today roll out the way I believe it has the potential to, which could be really huge on numerous fronts, not just the political front.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's another thing this administration does well, not just not leaking, not just not narrating their strategy and tactics, but coalition building. Susie Wiles and others are meeting with CEOs across the country every day. They have the private sector and conservative groups, nonprofits, very invested in their success, very tied to them. And that's, again, the way any White House that wants to succeed operates. All right. GDP figures out moments ago, had last half hour, 116. Here's the Wall Street Journal headline: economy grew at 3.0 in the second quarter. That's higher than was predicted. And Sean and Dan and I are very bullish on the prospect of greater growth, although I'm getting texts from people telling me that's not going to happen. We'll see.
Those must be the experts.
Exactly.
The experts. Yeah. I feel bad.
Yeah.
There are some signs. We'll get to it.
Okay. Do we have the CNBC reaction to the growth figures? I think we do. If we do, play that. If not, tell me we don't, and I'll move on.
Up 3%. Up 3%. Better than expected. That would be the highest level since the third quarter of 24, when it was up 3.1%. On the consumption side, up 1.4, very close to estimates. Up 1.4 would be the best since the last quarter of 24.
All right. Scott Bessent met with the Chinese yesterday.
Hey, Mark, I'm sorry. I just one quick point here that I just want to make sure I'm on the record on. When OMB and everybody talked about one big beautiful bill, et cetera, they talked about potential, what they believed the long-term growth of GDP would be. And they were mocked and ridiculed for greater than what most people believed, expectations and predictions would give you. We're obviously not there yet. And so but I'm just saying that this was a positive sign. It's one quarter. I'm obviously not trying to, but if these guys are actually right, what happened, it's not just about the GDP. It's not just about mocking the experts, which I do love, but it's actually about that growth and what it means for the deficit, what it means for debt and refinance is big. And so it's not just one quarter, but it has the potential to be really big economically, not just for what it means for the economy, but what it also means for refinancing debt, the deficit, et cetera.
100%. The only way this administration is going to reduce the deficit, unless they switch into entitlement reform on Social Security, is through robust growth. That's the way Bill Clinton did it. He raised taxes too. This administration won't do that. So the big building blocks of the economy, right? It's what's going on with trade, what's going on with energy at home and abroad, what's going on with the American domestic economy. And in Scott Bessent and the president and others, but those two are the primary actors, they think they got a handle on this. And of course, interest rates, right? These are the big factors that are going to speak to the question of whether Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are economic successes or not. So today, Axios, parroting the conventional wisdom that you'll find, including in the Wall Street Journal and to some extent in the New York Times, said, in fact, things look pretty good, that we haven't seen the calamitous effect of the tariffs, for instance, or other disruptions in supply chain that could be occurring. I've said before, watch back to school, which is about to happen, watch Thanksgiving, watch Halloween, watch Christmas. And Dan pointed out this morning that, in fact, maybe somewhat quietly, because no business wants to get the way Amazon did, temporarily on the wrong side of the administration and saying, yeah, we have supply chain and price problems. Here is CNBC 111, Jim Cramer saying that he looks at some earnings reports, and I'm talking slowly while I wait for 111 to come up. There it is. All right. Jim Cramer says earnings misses at these three companies show Trump tariffs are hitting consumers. Same idea, another CNBC headline 112. Again, you don't have to call too many CEOs or people in corporate America. Companies from Stanley Black and Decker to Conagra are saying tariffs will cost them hundreds of millions. Now, some of these companies are eating the tariffs to keep on Donald Trump's good side. But the proof will be in the pudding, particularly around those four shopping periods about what happens to prices. So, Dan, I know you are always generous towards Secretary Bessent and wait and see on the economy. There's certainly, if you took all the good signs in government data and what the corporate sector is saying, you'd have to say things are more positive than negative. But do you think the dark clouds are ominous, super ominous, or just something to watch?
No, I think it's something to watch. I mean, I think things are pretty good. I think this is the crux of why kind of cutting interest rates is problematic, because things aren't bad. But on the other hand, there are worrying signs. I mean, the bottom line is if you have 15% tariffs, 10% tariffs, 25% tariffs, I think we just put on India this morning, at some point that begins to show up on a bottom line, and you can only eat costs for so long before you have to kind of cross a bridge of, are we truly going to start going, into our savings, or are we going to have to start laying people off, raise prices, some combination thereof? So, I mean, look, so far they're landing the plane, they're threading the needle, I guess is a better analogy, but it's not smooth sailing.
Sean, we're dealing with two looming deadlines that are, days and a week away. One is the tariff deadline for the countries that haven't signed deals, and the other is the president's ticking clock on 10 days with Russia. Here's a development that relates in some ways to both. 202, just announced moments ago, higher tariff on India because of their purchase of Russian energy. Trump announced a 25% tariff on India starting Friday, unspecified penalties for buying Russian energy. Again, that correlates with the more with the tariff deadline than it does with the Russian sanctions deadline. But obviously, whether the Russian sanctions bring Putin to the table or not, this is going to cause some issues with energy distribution and prices. So, Sean, how do you see these two deadlines potentially affecting the macro U.S. economy?
Good question. One, I think this one's a little bit different because it's retaliatory, not part of the August 1st deadline, which everyone's going to get their letter, as the president said. And I don't think there's going to be that many more that get in under the deadline. That being said, Lutnick made it very clear that once you get your letter, you can get in the queue to work it down to probably closer to 15%.
Epstein said the same thing yesterday as well.
So, look, I assume, we've talked about this before, that a lot of what we expect August 1st is baked in. And maybe there's a little disruption, but I think most of it is baked in on August 1st. And we'll see country by country try to whittle their number down. I think that's separate than the Russia number, because the issue the concern that I have is the people that potentially face secondary tariffs, India, Iran, China, probably North Korea, that are going to face stuff because of dealing with Russia. There's two issues. One, how much trade would we do with them anyway? B, does that disrupt any sort of, we talked about this yesterday with China. This bleeds into a whole nother diplomatic issue. So I'm more concerned about it diplomatically than I am economically on that front. The August 1st one, I think it's coming. If you're not one of the big countries, you're going to get in a queue and you'll slowly whittle down a rate, and we'll go from there. But I do think that's baked in.
All right, let's go to Capitol Hill, where yesterday Cory Booker, senator from New Jersey, somewhat fresh off his long speech on the Senate floor that made him a bit of a hero in blue America, got angry at his Democratic colleagues who were moving forward on a bill that had passed on a bipartisan basis out of the Senate Judiciary Committee connected to funding for policing. And Cory Booker had what is pretty uncommon for either party, an open, angry fight on the Senate floor, not with the other party, but with Democrats of his own party. Here's a bit of on fire Cory Booker.
What I am tired of is when the President of the United States of America violates the Constitution, trashes our norms and traditions. And what does the Democratic Party do? Comply? Allow him? Beg for scraps? No, I demand justice. I will fight for Jersey every day, every night. This is a call, folks. The Democratic Party needs a wake-up call. I see law firms bending a knee to this president. I see businesses taking late-night talk show hosts off the air because they dare to insult a president. I see people who want mergers suddenly think that they have to pay tribute to this president. And what are the very people here elected to defend the Constitution of the United States saying, oh, well, today, let's look the other way and pass some resources that won't go to Connecticut, that won't go to Illinois, that won't go to New York, that will go to the states he likes. That is complicity with an authoritarian leader who is trashing our Constitution. It's time for Democrats to have a backbone. It's time for us to fight. It's time for us to draw lines. And when it comes to the safety of my state being denied these grants, that's why I'm standing here. Don't question my integrity. Don't question my motives. I'm standing for Jersey. I am standing for my police officers. I'm standing for the Constitution, and I'm standing for what's right.
Sean, we always try to be forward-looking here. If you were Chuck Schumer's comms director, take this question seriously, please. If you were Chuck Schumer's comms director, and would you go to him and advise him to do something about this, or this doesn't matter for the party?
I mean, I guess the question I have is, does it matter, right? So if you're Chuck Schumer, like that was theater. Cory, I mean, it's not like he actually, that was really begins with a D word to his colleagues. They were in the middle of a deal that was trying to get some funding, and he really pissed them off.
For police officers, by the way. For police officers.
Right. I mean, this was so I get, I mean, to answer your question, I don't know. I'd be worried that he would go out there and try, and say, the leader's staff came to me and tried to shut me up. And so, like, if you're Schumer, Schumer, say what you will, he's a very smart political guy. And he's going to go, if we go to him, it's going to make it worse. He obviously didn't mind selling out his colleagues for this stunt. So he'll sell me out too. Yeah. But I think in the back of Schumer's mind, this is one where Schumer puts that shit and says, okay, I got you. I'll remember this one, Cory.
Dan, is a series of questions. Is that moment good for Cory Booker going forward?
Cory Booker, 2028, being a serious player in a primary to start, very good.
Okay. Is it good for the Democratic Party that he had that fight?
Absolutely horrific. And ask Roy Cooper today in North Carolina how that goes over in his state.
So is it good for anybody on the Democratic side except for Cory Booker?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, I would actually say that, like, for the AOCs and the Mamdani, like, that wing probably got a little, that got them fired up. See, we were right. He's with us now. I mean, so I think depending on who you are in the party, maybe I'll let Dan answer that. But I would say that if you're a progressive, you just want an ally.
Well, so I'll break this up a little bit. First, I keep saying this: fight is not a strategy, right? That's the problem with Booker. I'll give you three different people, right, who are talked about for 2028 and kind of this issue. You have Booker, who keeps giving angry speeches, right? He doesn't do anything. He doesn't offer anything. He just screams fight. So he's the hysteria caucus right now. Gavin Newsom fought on immigration. We can debate if that was the right place, but there was substance behind what he was fighting about. Right? So that's a different type of fight. And then there's Josh Shapiro, who goes on Colbert the other night and literally says, my motto is get shit done. Right? So he's like, I don't want to hear the noise. I just try to get stuff done for people in my state. To me, what was so illuminating about Booker's just absurd rant was Trump is violating norms and traditions. For the last 10 years, the number one thing the electorate has wanted is change. Booker seems offended at change. He's like, God, we got to go back to the way things used to be, the way the Senate used to be run, the way kind of nothing to a lot of people ever happened. And that's the insanity of, again, there's no strategy.
Yeah.
It's just his sensibilities are offended. Therefore, scream as loud and be as hysterical as possible. When Cortez Masto just barely got elected in Nevada, Trump won Nevada. We have huge problems with Latinos, huge problems on security and crime and safety, which is what the bill was about to some extent. And that's where he picks a fight.
Somebody clip that Dan soliloquy off for social media, please, and get it posted ASAP. Punch Bowl News, a Washington insider publication, regularly looks at the leaders of both parties and ranks them. Let's steal that idea just for today. Schumer and Jeffries, Dan, what letter grade would you give them for their performance so far in 2025? Letter grade for Schumer, letter grade for Jeffries in terms of their performance and serving the interests of their party.
Yeah, an F. They have no strategy.
Both of them F.
Both of them an F. Both of them remain. They started unsure of where to go. They remain terrified of the base. They have no understanding of modern tactics in terms of how to organize and break through. And they have zero strategy. And we are heading into a budget negotiation this fall after the disaster in March. They still have no strategy.
Sean, do you give him an F or an F minus? I guess is probably the question.
F plus.
Well, when I was in high school, we used to call it a circle D. And that meant, Mr. Spicer, you're failing the class, but you try, so we'll give you a pass. I feel like I don't even give them a circle D.
Yeah, they're not trying.
And that's right. I mean, Dan's right. It's the definition of the word flailing. When you're just throwing mud at a wall, and that's what I think is happening.
Look at Schumer's Twitter feed yesterday. He tweeted about Jim Crow. He tweeted about Epstein. He tweeted about inflation, tariffs.
But even his tweets read like a statement in the congressional gallery, right? There's no,
because they are.
Yeah. There's no authenticity. There's no humor. There's nothing that breaks through. You read it and it's so dry and boring.
Yeah. I'll give him a D minus, but I'll say this: Punch Bowl can't give them an F because they need to get stuff from them every day. We don't.
I was going to say that's exactly.
We don't have that problem, but those two guys, I would say, more and more they look worse and worse. Like I thought, they're biding their time, they're figuring it out. Like they're gonna have to figure out how they're going to raise money to try to do well in the elections. They have to figure out how to be relevant in these conversations. They're going to have to figure out, as you said, a strategy on appropriations, and they just don't seem like they get where they are.
So can I take this one step further? And this is to Dan. If we're both in agreement on this, and it's not like, you're saying a C and I'm saying a D and whatever, and I think Mark's an L. I mean, like, we're all in general agreement that it doesn't look good. This is kind of like the Ken Martin situation in the sense that at what point do rank and file guys say, I can't sit back and watch this happen. We need new leadership. Is it, hey, we need to get our clocks clean. We need to set the election. But I think on all fronts, at some point, if I'm a rank and file member, we've seen this on the Republican side. Think about John Boehner, Paul Ryan, right? McCarthy, that sometimes greater than others, but there's a churn with some in our case, the conference, in your case, the caucus, of we need something to, we need to change things.
You can't beat something with nothing, and nobody's going to rise up against it.
Yeah, and I'll two things on that, Sean. One, look, watch for Schumer. He got Roy Cooper. He's trying to get Sherrod Brown in Ohio, and he's trying to get Janet Mills, the governor of Maine, to run against Susan Collins. If he gets all three and somehow they're able to pull those out, then look, Schumer will buy himself more time because he is an inside baseball kind of, operator.
Yeah.
I think if that doesn't happen and we don't make any progress, look, again, watch September, because I think we're going to cave on the budget. It's going to be a complete disaster. Booker's going to do what he just did. Booker's going to do what he did. Cortez Masto, Fetterman, what's her name in Michigan, others are going to say, you've lost your effing mind. Yeah. I'm going to sign this. Yeah. I think for Jeffries, if we end up netting a loss of like 10 seats or more, he's gone. Although I'll watch the Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Epstein.
Yeah,
You know,
can
when
we
I
please?
when I covered Bill Clinton in 1992, had the draft and Jennifer Flowers and Whitewater. There was always this thing where it's like I'd ask Clinton a question because I could get to him every day because there was no restraint on that. And he'd say stuff that none of us had ever heard, just like Donald Trump has been saying about Epstein and his relationship. And I'd go to people around Trump, both people who'd known him a long time, around Clinton, and the press staff, and I'd be like, can you guys answer the question? Like, when did the Whitewater deal start? When did he meet Jennifer Flowers? And they'd have no idea. They weren't feigning ignorance, but Clinton knew it all, and he wasn't talking to them. And so I look at what's going on with this White House now, and Donald Trump now, 2 days in a row, has offered new versions of his relationship with about an important aspect of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And there's no indication that anybody in the White House knows. Like, does the counsel's office know? Does the comm staff know? I don't know the answer. Here's some things that have occurred. First, here's Donald Trump yesterday telling a new version of the situation of how his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein ended, although it's not consistent with, for instance, what he's describing occurred before he gave New York Magazine favorable quotes about Jeffrey Epstein. But here's the president yesterday on Air Force One.
Mr. President, Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. Just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
Were some of them
young women?
Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken, and it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad, but that story's been pretty well out there, and the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
What did they do?
In the spa. The spa, yeah. People that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago.
People are saying it's one of the best spas.
People were taken out of the spa.
No, that was
by him.
Just straight on. It is one.
Yeah.
And other people would come and complain. This guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Jeffrey?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah. He
Within the space of 4 seconds, he says, "I don't know," and then he says, "No
complaints about us, as you know, none whatsoever."
Okay, so this is a whole new story, and it's, as I said, 2 years later, he's praising Jeffrey Epstein. After he says this occurred, he's praising Jeffrey Epstein to New York Magazine. Okay, now CBS News again. Murrow, Mike Wallace, Walter Cronkite, Tiffany. Their reputation, even before the latest stuff with Trump, is just, it's not what it once was. This report, which we're about to show you, if this were by the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, everybody'd be talking about it. And I suspect almost none of you have seen it. Here's CBS News on the Epstein prison video, which Kash Patel and the Attorney General said proved conclusively that no one was involved in Jeffrey Epstein's death except Jeffrey Epstein. Roll that, please.
This was the nearly 11-hour video agents reviewed when they investigated the death of convicted child predator Jeffrey Epstein. Government officials say it's proof that no one entered his cell tier. Malfunctioning equipment meant only one camera recorded the general area, and that camera captured part of the common area, including the officer's station and a sliver of the staircase leading to Epstein's cell. Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino.
There's video clear as day. He's the only person in there and the only person coming out. You can see it.
CBS News has reviewed the tape, and this is what it shows. The primary entrance is here. The pathway from the entrance to the stairs is completely out of view of the camera, leaving ample room for someone to enter unseen. This is the last time Epstein is believed to have been seen on camera, but we don't see him walking up the stairs to his cell. Bongino also said none of this video was doctored. It was the original, raw footage from the camera.
We're going to give the original so you don't think there were any shenanigans.
But a review by multiple video forensic experts found several indications this may not be raw footage.
WTF. Again, if that were somewhere else, people would be talking about this. And it goes to the question of, do they have their facts straight? this is so sloppy. The whole thing is so sloppy. There's other examples at best sloppy. So Sean, based on your knowledge or just your general understanding of Donald Trump, do you think anybody in Trump's world, in the government or out, know the facts of his relationship with Epstein, know the weaknesses in the video? Is this something they know and they're covering up, or it's all just chaos and they're not dealing with it?
Well, let's take that in sequence. I don't think anybody but him knows, and I don't think they ever will, because he will share in an iterative fashion the way that he has.
I just want to stop you on that point. If I were the White House press secretary, I would go to him and I'd say, Mr. President, you're out there saying stuff no one's ever heard before. Like, share the facts with us and let's figure out a good strategy for putting this out. Just no one does that in his life because he's in charge?
No, it's more because it's just not how he operates. He would say, what are you asking? And you'd say, well, what is there more? And he'd be like, no, there's not more. And so he is like I said, the word iterative is important here, because if you came back to him and said, well, they now have this, he'd be like, okay, well, with respect to that, that's what I mean. He would explain to you each iterative step, but it's just not how it works.
But if I understand, he's sui generis. But if you and I was the press secretary and you were the comms director for Bill Frist and he was running for president, like, we'd go to him and we'd say, there's this big story that's controversial that could, at a minimum, get us off message. Let's sit down with the council and let's walk through it all. And let's get all the documents and tell us everything we know, right? That's the way it would work for a normal politician, right?
Yes. Okay.
But it doesn't work with him. Does anyone try it, or everybody knows he's not interested in that? Like, it seems like that would be a good idea now.
So it depends on, I've seen it both ways. So sometimes it's, hey, let's just kind of get over this. And so let's talk about it. And sometimes like I said, it depends on the situation. So I've done with it financially where I've said, hey, there's a deal, they're talking about it. And he'll be like, okay, here's the deal. And to be honest with you, sometimes he's more generous with what he wants to tell you than others, but it depends on the situation. It depends on the subject matter. And it depends on what you know or what you don't know. So if you came to him and said, hey, I've got these 10 documents, they're asking these 5 questions, he'd walk you through those 5 questions in the document, and that's it. But that's just not, like I said, generally speaking, and I with Donald Trump, I never say that, you always know everything, because that's how he is. But in my experiences, it depends on the subject matter and what's being asked, et cetera.
Dan, just 1 second. If you want to get in on the conversation here, please raise your hand. Dan,
by the way, can I just one other point on it? Because so to your point, that Scott McFarlane from CBS, if that was a Breitbart reporter reviewing that footage, we would be going like, this is conspiracy theory. This is nuts. Yeah. I actually am amazed that there's not more churn. Because when you've got Scott McFarlane and CBS doing this, I have a feeling that this is going to go over. I will be really interested in seeing how right-wing podcasts and other stuff covers this today.
I would too, but I'd also be interested to see if the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal follow up on this, and whether the FBI is forced to explain how what they purported to be a definitive video, according to CBS, is anything but. Dan, if I were in charge of giving raises in the White House, the person I'd give a raise to is the person who spoke on background to the Washington Post and produced this headline, 109. This is an incredible job of spinetry. The Washington Post, I just can't understand how this could get into print. Here we go. 109. White House officials say storm over Epstein has calmed. They acknowledge Epstein has hurt the president's standing, but feel they've consolidated the MAGA base, which matters most to them. No doubt that the MAGA base, the influencers, are not inflamed the way they were before. But the notion that the storm has calmed, given House Republicans and everything else, seems off. Dan, if you were in charge of the DNC comms operation, or the assignment editor for the New York Times, like, where would you be headed on this story right now? What questions would you be asking?
I would keep digging on the relationship that Trump had, because they keep saying there's nothing more to this and we've released everything. And clearly it appears that is not the case. And more than anything, Americans are not satisfied. Survey after survey shows that. You have GOP members that are home already. that are telling Politico and Punchbowl and other kind of publications, talking to them, oh, this is coming up at home. Oh, we're going to talk about this again, when we come back. So I would just keep trying to dig to find out. And it seems like, as you say, every time Trump talks, we learn a new detail. So he's keeping this alive. There's no message discipline from him. And therefore, it creates a problem because, as you say, the White House doesn't seem to know. I do think Pam Bondi has some understanding. I think the fact that they reached out in May and instructed the FBI and everyone tell us every single instance of Trump's reference in those files, I think there's a sense, and he's sticking by her like he usually doesn't.
Yeah. All right, two exit questions on other topics. We don't have time to do at length, and then your questions. So again, please raise your hand. Scott Bessent yesterday in his CNBC interview played down the prospects of a Trump-Xi fall summit. Sean, do you still expect a Trump-Xi fall summit? Yes or no?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
The correct answer is yes. Okay. Mamdani is coming home, I believe, today after several tweets in response to the shooting in Manhattan from his plush Ugandan compound. Here's the Politico headline about how they're framing the connection. They call it his first test, and the article's kind of a little more apocalyptic about it. On a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being no effect and 10 being a major negative effect on his campaign, Dan, where would you rate the shooting as impacting the Mamdani campaign in the wake of a poll yesterday suggesting he was way ahead? That poll. 0 is no effect, 10 is cataclysmic.
I'm going to say it's a 6. But that poll yesterday, it's an outlier. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but it's the first that shows that Mamdani in a head-to-head with Cuomo and or Adams would romp them.
Yeah.
Everything else has so far shown that not to be the case. But
yeah, and it was done by people friendly to him. I'm not sure how seriously we should take it.
Yep.
Sean, 0 no effect, 10 cataclysmically negative. Dan said 6.
4.
The correct answer is 4. 4. Okay. All right, let's go to your questions. As always,
he's lucky it's August.
Yeah, he's lucky.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Let's go to your questions. As always, unmute, tell us where you are and what's on your mind for Sean and Dan. And we start with Thomas. Thomas, someone's just come home. You may want to say hi to them.
Yes, how are you today?
We're good, sir. Thank you for joining. Where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from very close to Cape Cod, Lakeville, Massachusetts. I get down into Providence quite often, Sean, as well as Newport. So I know your haunts.
I got to Google Lakeville.
Yeah,
I don't know where that is.
You'll see us on any map because we're literally surrounded by water down in southeastern Mass.
Lakeville, Mass.
How many Dunkin' Donuts do you have?
One in town.
Can you swim? Can you swim in the Long Pond?
Yes, you can.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area.
Yeah, not that far, not that close to the Cape, really.
About 20 minutes away.
20 minutes, okay.
Yeah, 40 minutes from Providence, 40 minutes from Boston, so it's pretty close to everything.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being part of Two Way. What's on your mind, Thomas?
Well, a number of things. A quick one on Epstein. My take on it is, of course, if there was anything that was going to be released, it would have been released during the Biden administration. I mean, they were throwing so many untrue things about Trump in there. You would have thought they would have used a true thing about Trump that they could have taken him out with. But it's probably that there are forces that will make sure that that is never released. And, since they didn't use it during the Biden administration, now insisting that Trump do it probably means that it can't be done, but they can use this against Trump as the same kind of negative that they used the Russian hoax in the first couple of years of his first administration, and then using the Russian hoax to flip Congress into the second half of his first administration using the impeachment process. So this is once again just something else to try to hogtie the Trump administration, but this time it's just not going to work because he's got too many things going for him this time around.
Hold on right there, Thomas. Sean, your response, and then Dan.
I generally agree with Thomas on this. This is if there was stuff to come out, considering everything else that's come out, there's no question this would have gotten more attention.
Dan.
I respectfully disagree. I mean, look, this is the Trump administration. This is the Trump DOJ. This is Trump supporters upset that this is not a Democratic conspiracy theory, that this is their own making, and he's having to deal with it. I also want to just say something, because you said this and somebody else said this yesterday. Democrats didn't impeach Donald Trump over Russia. I don't know why people keep saying this. That the first impeachment was over a call about Ukraine. That had nothing to do with Russia. So, I mean.
Oh, I completely agree.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, the whole point is that they used the Russian hoax between 2017 and 2018. And of course, then, suppressing the laptop, et cetera, to kick Congress into the Democrat Party for the second half of the first Trump administration. And after that, finding any excuse whatsoever to impeach him over.
Got it.
Thomas,
and goodness knows he did.
I gave this list yesterday. I'll give it again. And I'll just say also, you can't assume just because something didn't happen, you know the reason that didn't happen. In any case, it's just, in my experience, that's not the way life works. Number one, Attorney General Garland is a stickler for rules, and he may have refused to let the political people see what was in there about Donald Trump and decided it wasn't cricket to release it, because, as I say always about Merrick Garland, his level of political sophistication makes Eric Holder look like Rahm Emanuel. I'll use that line forever because I love it so much. Second is there may be things in there about Democrats, and they thought, well, if we release the stuff about Trump, the stuff about the Democrats could come out. And finally, the stuff about Trump could be non-criminal and very personal, and they just said, we're not going to play that game of putting out non-criminal personal stuff. I'm not saying those explanations are correct, and I'm not saying there's anything in there embarrassing about Donald Trump, but I'm saying I wouldn't assume that there isn't. And I've given you 3 possible reasons why. Okay.
No.
Okay. Thomas, you want to get one more topic in? Go ahead.
Yeah, one other quick topic. The whole thing about Obama and the entire thing about getting together with Brennan, getting together with Comey, coming up with this thing that started the entire Russia hoax. The big problem here is that Obama may not have committed a crime, but the CIA, the FBI, the administrative state exists to serve the executive branch of the United States government. As soon as the FBI and the CIA were involved in that, you had people working ostensibly on behalf of the federal government, literally coming up with a way to kneecap the executive branch. That's literally an attack on the federal government by employees of the federal government. I think that's where the big problem is going to be.
Okay, Thomas, thank you. Dan.
I respectfully disagree with you, Thomas. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Sean.
I keep repeating myself.
I think the bigger question, Thomas, that I keep coming up to is like accountability, right? I asked this to Michael Schellenberger on my show on Friday night, but I was like, are these people just bad? Like, there's 2 possibilities. Sometimes people screw up, and I acknowledge that possibility that someone just chose to look at something over something else, or was it blatant? Did they intend for a particular outcome? And he definitely believes that based on the people that he knows that were involved, it was blatant. That is the bigger concern to me, is that, there are people that are still involved in this today, and that there are people with an agenda at the highest levels. And a lot of people on the right, in particular in the MAGA movement, are very concerned about the sort of what they would refer to as the deep state in the intelligence community.
Thomas, thank you. Very grateful to you. Hope you'll come back. All right. David, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are in Brooklyn and what's on your mind for Sean and Dan.
You're in a different room today, David.
I am in the yeah, I'm in the southern Colorado section of Brooklyn, so
Okay.
uh for the rest of the summer.
Got it.
So I'm sorry. I have a lot of sympathy with you guys dealing with 98-degree temperatures, but
Don't you feel bad you're not going door to door from Mamdani?
We are cool and breezy out here. I don't think the operation has started up yet, really, but when it does, yes, actually, I'm planning to. So there.
Okay. All right. We're
Can I say?
we're gonna send a GoPro.
You're gonna vote for him, David? You're planning to?
He's gonna work for him.
Mamdani?
Not just vote for him. He's gonna
As many times as they let me.
David, when you go door to door to canvas, we're gonna give you a GoPro and a miner's cap.
And a vest.
I feel like you're being sarcastic, but I don't know. It's not a bad idea.
Well, not in your neighborhood. It won't be. There'll be high fives and hugs.
There'll be hugs. The GoPro lens will be fogged over from the hot breath of the aggressive Mamdani supporters giving you big
you
hugs
don't know what
solidarity.
what hostile neighborhood they might send me to. If they send me to
my neighborhood, you'll get a lot of.
They send me to Borough Park. It could be touchy. Who knows?
What's on your mind, sir? Colorado, Brooklyn.
Well, I leave it to you. Do you want my outlier opinion on Mamdani, which I guess you already know? My outlier opinion on Trump, Epstein. I'm sorry, not Trump. Epstein, or what I really want to talk about, which is Gaza.
Let's talk about Gaza.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Gaza.
Well, I think we're all entranced with the Epstein story. It's so much fun, and I think that we're missing this, basically the story of the year, maybe the story of the decade. If I was being grandiose, I'd say maybe the story of the century, which is that public opinion is finally making a turn off of Genocide Avenue, at least onto Humanitarian Crisis Boulevard. We have people as diverse as Marjorie Taylor Greene and my new personal hero, Cindy McCain, all saying that, it is starvation, it is deliberate, it is genocide. There was a big article in the New York Times by a genocide scholar saying, yes, it is genocide. And of course, there are opinions written in very soon on both sides. But I feel like we're experiencing the turn, and people are not noticing, except to the extent that they notice that, for example, Keir Starmer, that pillar of courage, has made an alteration in his position, and Mr. Macron has made an alteration in his position. And you're hearing people like Amy Klobuchar talk about how there's a humanitarian crisis, but it's not a humanitarian crisis, it's genocide.
David,
and the world, I think the world population already caught up to this, but it's the world leaders who are finally catching up as well.
David, define the specificity what you think Israel's doing that constitutes genocide.
Well, I leave it to the genocide scholars because they seem to be pretty much in agreement. And the policy of deliberate starvation, it goes back to statements a week after October 7th talking about there will be no food entering Gaza, there will be no water, there will be no electricity. They were saying it back then, and with some intermittent interruptions, it's been going on ever since.
Sean,
I leave it to Cindy McCain to tell you exactly what's going on.
Sean.
I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead. The only thing I was going to say is, look, I don't. I think two things can be true at once. We've talked about this a lot on a lot of different subjects, and I obviously the imagery of this of the children in particular is concerning. The president acknowledged that the other day. That doesn't excuse at all what happened on October 7th. So I think we can do what we can, but let's also face reality that Hamas uses and weaponizes aid as a means, as a PR tactic. So it's true that there is a need. It's true that there are some problems, but it's also true that Hamas weaponizes humanitarian aid as a means to garner support. So again, the problem is there's no winner right now. Like we can acknowledge what happened on October 7th and what an atrocity that was and who started that. But then we can also acknowledge that there are innocent people that need to be taken care of. There are collateral damage.
even the New York Times, which has been resolutely pro-Israel all along, has started publishing these articles using the G word. And they had one actually recently which said there's no evidence that Hamas has been stealing food. This whole concept of, well, we can't send food in to starving people because Hamas is going to steal some portion of it. They said there's no evidence. Of course, they have limited ability to ascertain whether there's evidence because Israel hasn't allowed foreign reporters in for 21 months. And my estimation of the situation is that once those foreign reporters, if they ever are allowed into Gaza, the coverage then shifts dramatically. And you're just going to see horrors that you've never anticipated in your life. And the publicity is going to be terrible for the state of Israel. If you think it's terrible now, it's going to be so much worse.
Dan.
Why? Wait. I'm sorry. Can you expand on that? Why is it going to be worse?
Western reporters have not been allowed into Gaza for 21 months. A reporter recently was told that flying a helicopter over Gaza, he was not allowed to put his camera to the window. He said, I could see the devastation, but I wasn't allowed to photograph it. Once it's being photographed, once they're picking through the rubble and they're picking through the body parts, it's going to be devastating. That's all. That's my prediction. You can tell me I'm wrong, but
no. I just wanted clarity on that. Thank you. I was just asking for clarity.
Dan.
I think this is such a hard issue because you're right, David. The Israelis did telegraph early on that when they were kind of like, we're in it to win it now, that all strategies and tactics were on the table to achieve victory, which is how most countries, when they face an existential threat, operate. I think there is a history of Hamas doing stuff like putting military installations and leadership installations under hospitals and schools and in neighborhoods because they know that if you're going to come get them, there's going to be civilian casualties and the images are bad. So it is not, and of course, the Israelis believe that they are taking some aid and preventing it from coming in or using it themselves to feed their soldiers. I don't know if that's true, but certainly Hamas's history, it's not implausible. I agree with the president and others. Starving children is gut-wrenching, just full stop. It is hard to stomach that in any era, whether it's the world wars or today. But I am also very sympathetic to the Israelis that how much longer can they keep living with people on their borders who are intent on trying to harm them? Like that is, I get that Israel for the probably like one of the stories of the century may be that Israel is remaking the Middle East. I mean, Iran is weaker than they've ever been in the modern era. Hamas, what happened in Syria, so as is often the case, I think these things are not black and white. It is not one side is right and one side is wrong. And hopefully the children receive food.
Yaakov, I have a funny feeling that although your fellow Brooklynite lives when he's home pretty near you, you've got a different point of view, which we'd love to hear now.
Yes. So, hi, good morning. So yes, two things could be true at the same time. From March until May, Israel did not allow any aid into Gaza. That is 100% true. But what is the reason why Hamas, one of the main points on the ceasefire agreement is that Hamas says that the humanitarian aid must come in through the UN and not through the American humanitarian aid system because they cannot use that money to fund their war. Number one. Number two, in 2004, Hamas made $500 million on selling humanitarian aid to Gazans for crazy prices. So if you really care about Gazans and you really care about dead children, demand that Hamas stop the war. Leave. Give up the hostages and leave. And if you want to see the biggest proof of it, look at Rafah. Rafah right now is being run by a clan in Gaza. There's no people getting killed. Everybody's eating. Everybody's getting food. That is that is the way forward. And the final point, the New York Times put on the front page, I think on Friday, a picture of this kid, and they claimed that it was because of starvation. And then yesterday they put on the PR post on X how this kid has a disease. So like, stop, enough. If you really care about Gaza, if you really care about Palestinians, tell Hamas to leave and do work, give up our hostages and leave. Very simple.
David, which of those things would you like to respond to?
Am I unmuted? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you're good.
Donald Trump said a very clever thing the other day. He's not a stupid man. I've said it a million times. He said, we're down to very few hostages. We're down to 20 hostages. And Hamas doesn't want to give them up because it's the only card they have to play. So in other words, he understands that if they do what these supposedly dispassionate people are saying, which is, Hamas simply has to give up, release the hostages, and say that they're not, we surrender and everything will be peaceful and lovely. Donald Trump understands that once they give up their only trump card, the hostages, then they have no protection whatsoever, no defense against a total onslaught against everyone in the enclave, which is already ongoing, but it would only get worse. So the idea that, Hamas just has to give up the hostages and there will be peace is nonsense. And Donald Trump and I both recognize that.
It's not going to be peace. It's going to be Hamas loses, Israel wins. I was in Israel on October 7th. I was an hour away. I had missiles going over my head. I was back. Yes, Hamas loses, Israel wins. That's the way it works. Evil loses, good triumphs over evil. Simple.
Well, I think the challenge here is, David, what you just said about why would they give up and why would they give up that bargaining chip? Why would the Israelis give up their bargaining chips?
David, do you want to comment on anything else Yaakov said?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you both for being on. Appreciate your
thank you guys
your passion and the civility you brought to it, and that New York Times thing we were going to talk about, but ran out of time. But it's certainly an interesting media choice. But I know a lot of people. I've heard from a lot of people who say the Times engaged in bad faith on it. I don't know that they did. I think they just made a big mistake, and I'm glad to see them correcting it. Sean, what do you have tonight on your program at 6?
Kansas Senator, Kansas U.S. Senator Roger Marshall will be on. We got a lot to talk about the economy, the trade deal, what it means for the ag community in particular. And then, so it's interesting. We talked about this a little before, where that balance is. They want to trade more, but then all of a sudden you got we talked about this, the Maha piece of this. How's that going over in farmland where people got pesticides and concerns about impact on their food? So a lot to get to with Senator Marshall.
He's a doctor too, Dr. Roger Marshall.
He is a doctor, Dr. Roger Marshall.
All right, a bunch of stuff to tell you. First of all, in 2 minutes, I'll be on with Michael Smerconish, my weekly appearance on Sirius XM. In addition, Michael is my guest on the new episode of Next Up, which you can listen to now or watch. Also, lots of conversation about Epstein, about Donald Trump, about the Democrats. My monologue is about the Democratic Party. So watch or listen to that if you would. Tonight, Dan and I will be co-hosting Two-Way tonight because at some point during the program, I'm going to slip off to go join Brett Baer on Special Report. So join Dan and me at 6 this evening. And then two ways besides Two-Way tonight coming. Megan at noon, Megan McCain with Nikki Schwab of the Daily Mail to talk about everything at noon Eastern. And then Bridget Fedesi at 7. We'll be talking about everything woke and anti-woke, including Sydney Sweeney and the Genes ad, which we talk about on Next Up as well, because what a topic that is. And the three of us will be back in just 23 hours, a little under 23 hours, for another episode of this program. And besides, we know we're going to have the Fed chair to talk about the Fed announcement, the Fed press conference, and we know we're going to have the Maha event, but part Spidey sense port reporting. I think we're going to have something big to talk about, both tonight at 6 and also tomorrow at 9 a.m. So
is this Jerome Powell's last morning at the Fed?
I can't say. I'm I'm just urging everyone who's interested in news to watch at 6 tonight and then tomorrow at 9. And we'll see if my sources are right. But stay tuned, as they say in the news business. Grateful to you all for being part of the two-way community. Enjoyed having Thomas on with us. And we'll see you all tomorrow at 9 Eastern. Have a great evening. Great day.